Hello, my lovely people. Thank you for joining. I hope. Let me testing. Yeah. Okay. We got sound. Great. Otherwise, I'll hear from you all if it didn't. But I thought it'd be a good time to check in on exactly what's going on because Bitcoin is really weak, and we always try to calculate as to why certain things are happening. But in the discovery phase, we uncovered something very, very special that will blow your mind. Really interesting. So, again, like everything else, markets are irrational, but over time, the cream floats to the top. So, friendly man, thank you so much. I got people out in for Europe as well. I'm going to dissect the performance of the first 4 days of the ETFs, break down each number, the overall demand, look at the trends, look at the volume, analyze the supply, and as I previously mentioned, talk about an uncovery, which is really startling as well. And the market is very, 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 very weak, but that's okay. And I have another little forecast too. It looks like the miners and the proxies have bottomed, and they are now beginning to recover faster than Bitcoin. So that's about time too. So let's jump in. And now this is financial advice. It's just numerical observations. Don't forget to subscribe as well. Let's talk with some charts first. There's a lot of concern. People are talking about, oh, Bitcoin's going to 35,000. That's what I'm going to buy. Let's look at our layer model to find exactly where we could go. Now, there is a chance, a small chance, maybe 10% chance of 39,000. That would be layer 7 based on our model. But we'll see. We can see the layer 8 is at 45,000, which we've had a lot of battle with for quite some time. But overall, this is just an anomaly, and I'll explain exactly why this is happening. In addition, when you look at bull market pullbacks, and a shout out to On-Chain College on Twitter, this is his beautiful chart. This is the last bull run and all of the bull market pullbacks from the very beginning of the bull run. Minus 27.3%, minus 42.3%, minus 49.2%, minus 62.6%, minus 22.1%. So when you compare that to this particular bull run, this one looks very timid, only minus 18%, minus 17%, and minus 20.1%. So it is not that bad at all compared to previous cycles. The asset is larger, the players are bigger, the long-term holders are hitting all-time highs, few are selling, although some of the short-term holders are selling as well. But let's find out exactly, start digging into exactly what's happening behind the scenes. First, the TABI model, which shows you the heat of the index of the Bitcoin price, has gone back down to lime green. And if we look back in history and identify, okay, we go to yellow, which is kind of like middle of the road. That's middle heat of the Bitcoin price. You want to buy when it's ice blue, blue, light blue, lime. They're all great buying places per this model. When it starts getting yellow, that's when you maybe slow down your buying a little bit. And then oranges, yeah, then you start planning your exit perhaps. And then red is, whoa, it's definitely time to pull the ejector seat. Now, that's basically how this works. Bilal, thank you for coming. But what's interesting is if you look back at this chart over time and you identify all the times that we've gone from lime green to yellow, back to lime green, to yellow, back to lime green, that is a pullback. And you can see here, we had the big run up for the ETF and the yellow down here on the right hand side, and then we've pulled back out of it, which is pretty common. But there comes a time where we just hit yellow and go straight up. And that could be happening in the next 90 days or less, because that's how many days there are till the Bitcoin halving, and then we know things will go crazy. Now, what else is happening at the same time? We got this. Sometimes, bad luck comes in threes or perfect storms happen, but we're seeing that right now as well, because we have things like proxies selling off. We have the ETFs doing some funny things. We have Grayscale selling off too, but so are the miners. I checked on the Bitcoin miner reserves, and you can see that huge spike down. Just over the last 3 or 4 days, they started dumping fast. Now, those Bitcoin are probably going to end up in the hands of the ETFs, which is taking away a bit of the buying pressure from the traditional market, obviously, through some type of OTC counters somewhere along the way. So these are replenishing the OTC counters, which are running very, very low on Bitcoin. So that's basically the TA part of it, but let's go and look at some more things. And a quick reminder, we had 11 ETFs approved, and as usual, the winners take most, and that is happening exactly here too. But of these guys, well, you know the names, what's really interesting right now is the enormity of this event. I just have to underscore it one more time. Bitcoin became a legitimate asset class for money runners, okay? And these are folks that do extensive due diligence on the asset. They don't all jump in day one. They start learning, say, what's Bitcoin? Maybe read the white paper. I doubt it, but some might. But they do extensive due diligence before they start telling their customers, you need to get some of this fast. That day is going to happen. Also, it's been advertised all over the place too. So let's break down what's going on. Now, one thing I observed today for the first time ever, we're beginning to see the actual spot ETFs track the price of Bitcoin. I have not seen that for the first 4 days. Now it's real tight. So if you look here, it's nice to see Bitcoin right in the middle of this range. HODL fell 3.15%. BTCW fell 2.45%. But if you look at the big guys, Bitcoin down 3.01% at the time when I took this snapshot. GBTC was down 2.85% and IBIT 2.87%. So they're very, very, very close to tracking exactly what Bitcoin is doing, which is extremely good news. I was very concerned at the beginning when Bitcoin would be up and the Bitcoin would be down like 6%, these things would be up, and then vice versa. It was like, what's going on here? But things are beginning to stabilize. They had to grease all the skids to run everything. Now, I did a Patreon post yesterday on exactly how this thing works, how blockchain meets TradFi, and it's a mess. So if you want to hurt your brain, check that chart out. Now, what I also did was calculated all of the Bitcoin under management after just 4 days, and this tells a very interesting picture. You can see here, there's the price of the ETFs. Then we have the amount that they hold, daily volume, etc., etc. But when you look at all of this and you sum up the big players, excluding Grayscale, I'll talk about them in a minute, but you can see now iShares now has over 25,000 Bitcoin, Fidelity over 20,500, and ARK 21, the third biggest, 12,200 Bitcoin. And you add all of these ETFs together, excluding Grayscale, you now have 78,689 Bitcoin in these ETFs. That is a lot. But there's another part of the story too. First of all, you look at the mothership, it's Grayscale. They still have 88.3% of Bitcoin. And you can see the other big three, iShares 3.7, Fidelity 3.1, ARK 1.8, Bitwise 1.2, and the rest are crumbs. So we ignore the crumbs, we focus on the big players. But when you pull that out and you see here very clearly who the big players are, and of course we thought Blackrock was going to win. They are winning. 78% of all the Bitcoin was accumulated by the top 3 players. The rest are hanging in there, and you got Frank Franklin in there, and Invesco, Wisdom Tree, Valkyrie. They're all kind of doing okay, but we knew the big players like Blackrock, Fidelity would do very, very well. ARK is also doing well because Cathie Wood, they had a ton of GBTC for years and years in their ARK funds. Now they're piling into their own ARK Bitcoin fund too. So good for them. Why not? Well, why would you buy somebody else's product? But let's look at some more numbers. Let's break it down and turn it into a dollar value here. It's going to be a couple more tables and then we'll get to the conclusion in a second. But you can see the dollar value of Grayscale, 25 billion. iShares Bitcoin Trust just broke $1.05 billion. That's big. Fidelity, I expect, could be at $1 billion tomorrow. ARK is at $500 million, etc. And that's important to know. The total value of all of these guys, excluding Grayscale, is $3.3 billion. And we're only 4 days in. Okay? I know in today's world, $3.3 billion isn't a lot of money when the US government has $34 trillion in debt, but it's substantial. Let's see how it stacks up. Now, first of all, this is from Bitcoin Archive, just reemphasizing again, BlackRock have over $1 billion worth of Bitcoin, and Bitcoin price actually is just under 41,000 as I speak right now, but breaking that 25,000 Bitcoin is big. Next step will be maybe 50,000 Bitcoin. That could take another week or so from here, and that's what's stunning. Now let's look at where it looks, and you can check this out for yourselves. You go to the IBIT page, just Google IBIT. It'll take you to this page, and where it says shares, it's kind of confusing, is the amount of Bitcoin that they actually have. 25,067. And this is updated typically sometimes during the day, normally at the end of the day. And normally there's a big delay, 1 or 2 days between the money that they take in before it's reflected here. So this is probably more than 30,000 right now as we speak. But there's a twist. Let's talk about this piece first, because this puts everything into extremely stark perspective. And I'm only going to look at Blackrock for these numbers here, which are kind of fascinating, just to understand what I mean by supply crunch. Okay, we're 4 trading days in. BlackRock's ETF has accumulated over 25,000. It's probably more than that at this stage, averaging 6,250 Bitcoin a day. The entire world's new supply of Bitcoin per day is 900. Okay, in 90 days, it'll be 450 per day. So if you got one big company sucking out over 6,000 a day, and soon in 90 days, there'll only be 450 produced, that will be a huge supply crunch. No ifs, ands, or buts. BlackRock's ETF is sucking, all right? We'll be sucking 14 days worth of supply out of the market every day if this current rate continues. And I believe it will as people get more and more educated. And BlackRock could potentially have 1% of the Bitcoin supply in a very short window of time as well. You know, at this rate, they could actually catch Michael Saylor with MicroStrategy pretty quickly. But let's look at exactly what's happening now, because there's a funny phenomenon that we have the numbers behind, and that is Grayscale is being drained. Nobody wants their 1.5% fees when they can get less. So some of it is leaving. People that don't have a tax implication, they're just flopping out. And you can see here exactly 26,902 Bitcoin left GBTC since before the ETF started. And it's moved into the other funds. Okay, so that's a simple way of understanding exactly what's happening with the 78,000 that's being acquired. You have to net off about 27,000. So it's about 50,000 net going into the funds. So it's basically part of it. 1/3 is moving around from one to the rest. Okay. In addition, another view of how good these things are, and people say, oh, it's not a success, it's a dud. Well, look at this. The 3 of the Bitcoin ETFs are now in the top 10 of the most traded ETFs on planet Earth. Okay, so that's a pretty good achievement. IBIT is BlackRock's number 4, Fidelity number 5, and that is impressive. And again, it's early days yet. Go forward, wait till BlackRock have more than, 25,000 Bitcoin in there. When they got 100,000, 200,000, they'll be at the top of the charts here. Okay, that's a forecast that I can guarantee you will happen in a very short window of time. Now, this is another piece of scary numbers, and you break everything down. What happens if this rate of consumption by the ETFs actually continues? So you got the total ETF growth in 4 days, 78,000, less GBTC drainage, 26.9. You've got your net of 51,787. Average demand per day across all the ETFs is 12,947. And the trading days per year in the calendar year is 252. If you imagine the average demand per day, this is the key part here, everybody, is 12,947, which is what it has been for the first 4 days. You annualize that, that's 3.26 million Bitcoin. Does that exist for sale? The answer is no, it does not. You'd have to shake a lot of Bitcoin free from the long-term holder hands to even get close to that. Remember, there'll never be more than 15 million Bitcoin, maybe 14, because so many are lost, okay? And then what's there, a lot of it is held by long-term holders that aren't letting go. So there's not a lot available for them to buy. If you take the amount of Bitcoin on exchanges, somewhere between 1.2 and 1.8 million Bitcoin today, that's not even a spit in the bucket for what that is there right now. Now let's take that, what did I say, 3.26, 3.3 million, I like threes. Imagine I take just a fraction of that, less than a third. Now, what I imagine, there will be 1 million in Bitcoin in the ETFs by the end of this year. That is my conservative estimate. That means the demand for them will fall by nearly 70% over the next year from what it has been for the first 4 days. I think the opposite could happen, very confident, but even just assuming the demand is 1 million Bitcoin, less GBTC drainage, because that will continue. So I'm going to pull out under 148,000. That means the 1 million demand will be in part satiated by drainage from GBTC. The net will be 851,976 Bitcoin. The demand per day is 3,381, again, 252 days. And that is kind of crazy what's going to happen. Now, what does that mean? Okay, they need 3,400 Bitcoin per day, but we know how many is produced. Very, very little. It's going to go from 900 per day to 450. How can this machine be fed is the big question. And this is the actual numbers behind that. So you got your first 4 months of daily production in 2024 will be 900 per day. That's 108,000. And we're having, for the next 2/3 of the year, the next 8 months, that takes us to 450 times 8 months times 30. That gets to 108,000. This year, only 216,000 will be produced. And we already discussed about how many will be needed. 3.3 million. Supply crunch, anybody? Yeah. But there's more. So let's pull this numbers together and calculating my very, very, very conservative shortfall. Again, based on my model of this one here. Again, I've warned you a lot of tables. This one, where there's 1 million demand, not 3.3 million, just 1 million, and where that brings us right now. You can see here, if there's just 1 million, less than 150 from GBTC, that will bring us a total ETF demand of 851,000, but we're only making 216,000 Bitcoin in 2024, which means the shortfall will be 635,976 Bitcoin, and that assumes nobody is buying Bitcoin and putting it in cold storage. No sovereign nations are buying it. And also it assumes every miner sells every Bitcoin that they have and they're not stacking any. None of this is even possible. This is what's exciting. This is why I'm bullish on Bitcoin. So I hope people get it. But there's another little angle here as well. Now, when you put this in perspective, all right, the Bitcoin left to be mined of the next 116 years is, guess how much? 1.398 million. Okay? 116 years. That's all that's coming. The demand for this year alone will be, conservatively, remember, this 635,000 shortfall is assuming, I'm only assuming 1/4 of the current demand over the last 4 days. 1/4 of it continues. And that's also impossible. So, if you imagine the balance left that's going to be mined over the next 116 years will be sucked up in just 2 years from just the ETF demand of the shortfall. Okay, that is the 1.398 million over the next 116 years divided by 635, about 2 years to exhaust it. Again, everything I'm painting here in this tapestry is a massive supply crunch. And I know a lot of people are worried Bitcoin's falling, it's under 42,000, they're freaking out. It's like, just wait, markets are irrational. There's the stuff happening and stuff being moved from grayscale. That's going to stop at some stage. And then good things are going to happen. Now, again, if you take my very conservative, just 1 million into ETFs by the end of the year, what does that represent in the assets under management for these ETF players? This is also stunning. This means they will only be allocating 0.13% of their assets under management to Bitcoin. All right? And everybody says, well, you have to be 2, 3, 5% allocated. That's all I am assuming, which is also very small. Now, this is a question from the community this morning. Hey, James, won't the demand for Blackrock ETF slow down? We could imagine that on the first 4 days of trading when there's a lot of stacked demand from past months. No. If anything, the opposite is true. All right? That first 4 days that I've just showed you is not even a fraction of what's going to happen. And even if you take my very conservative 1 million Bitcoin going into ETFs, it's only 0.13% of an allocation of the assets under management for these funds, which is completely crazy. Now, going to our experts here, these are the expert recommended allocations I've shared before. Tom Lee says at least 2%. Everybody should have in Bitcoin. Matt Tuttle, 5 to 10%. Dave Nadig, 1 to 3%. Again, you take an average of all of these, you're around 3.5 to 4%. And I am only assuming 0.13% for an absolute supply crunch from hell to hit this market. So I hope I'm being very clear. And I wish I had more cash to buy Bitcoin. Now, there is another thing. Again, this is back to this question here from Criticalis. I love that name. What also is happening in this perfect storm that's going on all at the same time? Well, 60-40 portfolio is dead, unless you're talking to your financial advisor who is from the 1970s. They'll tell you it's not. But now there might be a 60/BTC portfolio coming. All right. Everybody knows this is where the alpha's coming from. You're not going to get it from the S&P 500. You're not going to get it from gold. You definitely will not get it from bonds, okay? So this new 60-40 is going to become 60-something/Bitcoin or 60/Bitcoin, or for the complete degens, 100% Bitcoin. Anyway, that's fun. But there's a little bit more. So we're going to talk about some other news now. Shout out to this guy. He always makes me laugh. He's very funny. One of the things I am doing, due to popular demand, I will be... It's kind of like a play on 12 Days of Christmas. I've been asked to do this for a long time, so I've analyzed a whole bunch of altcoins and identified winners in previous eras, mapped them to today, and identify the winners for the bull run of the next 12 to 18 months. It is, however, a very speculative allocation. I kind of put together a portfolio. Ran and I were supposed to doing a portfolio face-off, but that didn't happen because we couldn't agree on terms. So instead, I'm just going to do it piecemeal for you all. I'm going to break down all of the ones that I choose over the next 12 days. I'll still be doing my news and Q&A and all that stuff. So that's all going to be normal. These will be kind of short little segments that I'm going to pump out, and they're going to be fun. But what's really interesting is there's a lot of alpha to be had here. But remember, allocations matter. Just to put this in perspective, this is kind of like my pure form crypto portfolio. My Solana altcoins will be a very, 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 very small selection of my portfolio, under 5%. Now, they may grow 2 or 3 times as fast as other fast-growing cryptos, which means that 4% could become 12 or 15%, and that would not surprise me. So that's coming as well over the next few days too. In addition, be careful with leverage. If you are playing with leverage, make sure you can handle a massive wick. So actually, let's go back to one of the early charts from today. If you are playing with leverage, make sure you are covered down through a couple of support levels. So for example, on this chart here, if you are playing with Bitcoin leverage, make sure that if Bitcoin does spike down to 36K, 35K, you still have enough margin in the bank to cover your short so you don't lose all your money, okay? Because people still, every single day, get wrecked. And here we've lost $172 million in the last 24 hours, okay? And it was $250 million a couple of days ago. So be careful out there with leverage. In addition, this is kind of funny. TradFi world is coming in. Franklin Templeton is now pumping crypto humor and 0 fees until August 2024. Again, the race is on to grab more market share. And these guys are hilarious. So whoever runs Franklin Templeton's Twitter page, top marks. But they're also doing other weird stuff too. There's been a lot of talk about an Ethereum ETF, but now you've got Franklin Templeton already looking forward to something else. And they're already talking about a token called Solana. And they understand Anatoly's vision of the single atomic state, etc. They're impressed by all the activity seen on Solana. They're even looking at freaking meme coins. They know what Firedancer is, etc. And this is interesting because the question always remains, are these deeply entrenched TradFi players looking beyond the Bitcoin ETF? Oh yeah. Oh yeah. They're looking at crypto ecosystems on the whole and how those crypto ecosystems can actually modernize how they operate. This is an exciting time, and this is a sign of all that is happening in the space. In other fun news as well not so fun news, Millet spoke at the WEF, and he said the West is in danger of being on the path to socialism. And that is kind of scary. It was very brave of him to get up there in front of all those people and say those things, because they have a different plan. And yeah, socialism, UBI, in many countries is technically already here, but he expects it to get a lot worse. And also a little bit of sad news too. Pakistan fired some missiles at terrorist hideouts in Iran. And I'm just hoping things don't overheat too much in the Middle East, because we need peace. And I don't know why somebody isn't out there being a peacemaker. So with that, everybody, thank you so much for coming. Thank you to everybody on Patreon. Hope you enjoyed the show. Let me know below in a comment if you are bullish or not, or you think the supply crunch stuff is all BS. I've proven to you mathematically it certainly is not. So I'd love to hear from you all. Thank you all for coming. Thank you to the mods in the chat, and everybody as well that, let me see, I missed one. From Bilal, thank you as well. I'll put this to great work in the future. And thank you, Piper and T&D Tesla and everybody else. Have a good night, everybody. See you all tomorrow. Tomorrow, we're starting with the 12 days of Jupuary. So there's a little play on words there, but you'll understand more about that real soon too. Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.